Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. No matter what time you're watching, welcome. Let me know in the comments what city you're tuning in from. And hey, if this story popped up for you, it's because it deserves to be heard. So, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more like it. The red dirt still held the day's heat when sleep abandoned me that July morning. 53 years lived, 15 of them alone since Mary passed, and I knew every sound that came from the woods. The song of the mockingbird in the winter mornings, the growl of the jaguar when it came down from the hills to drink water from the creek, the hoot of the burrowing owl announcing death. But that howl, that one was different. I sat on the edge of the bed, bare feet touching the cold concrete floor. The house was silent as a graveyard. Outside, the wind blew through the eucalyptus trees I'd planted right after we got married, back when I still believed we'd have a long life together. Mary used to say they'd grow up with our kids, providing shade for our grandkids to play under. Now they swayed like ghosts in the yard, reminding me of promises that time took away with her. The howl came again, closer, more urgent, more human. I got up slowly, my joints cracking like dry wood. 15 years of solitude had aged me more than the 50 before them. I walked to the window and opened the calico curtain that Mary had sewn the last Christmas we spent together. Outside, the full moon lit up the pasture where the cows slept standing up, chewing grass in the dark. It wasn't the coyotes that sometimes showed up around here, looking for water in the creek that ran through my property. They had a different sound, higher pitched, wilder. What I was hearing sounded almost like a child crying, lost in the middle of the woods, almost like Mary, before she died, used to wake me up in the middle of the night saying she heard children crying in the yard. The doctor said it was the medicine causing hallucinations, but what if it wasn't? What if she really heard something I couldn't? I slipped on the worn leather boots I'd bought at a county fair in Springfield, Illinois more than 20 years ago. They still fit perfectly because the life of a lonely rancher doesn't wear out footwear. I grabbed the flashlight and the 12-gauge shotgun my father left me, not out of malice, but out of precaution. 15 years living alone on the land between Springfield and Decatur had taught me that solitude can be a companion, but recklessness never is. The porch creaked under my feet, old wood, eaten away by time and the summer rains. Mary always said we needed to replace the boards, but there was never any money left over. After she died, there was never any will left. What's the point of improving a house where only ghosts live? The horse, Thunder, whinnied when I approached the corral. He was a big animal, brown, with a white patch on his forehead that looked like a star. Mary chose the name, said the sound of his hooves on the ground reminded her of summer rain. Even in the dark, I could tell he was restless too. His ears were up, his nostrils flared, picking up scents I couldn't smell. "Let's go, boy," I whispered in his ear, patting his neck. "There's something out in the valley, and it ain't good." I mounted bareback, like I did in my boyhood days, when my father was still alive and would take me to ride the pastures before sunrise. "A real man doesn't need a saddle," he used to say. "A saddle is for those who don't know how to talk to a horse." Thunder was an excellent conversationalist. He always knew when I was sad, when I was angry, when I was scared. Tonight, he knew I was feeling all three at the same time. We galloped down the dirt road that led to Wolf Valley, a patch of thick woods at the back of the property. It was a place I'd avoided since Mary's death. It was there that she used to pick wild plums and crab apples as a kid before we met. It was there that I asked her to marry me, kneeling among the yellow tulip poplar blossoms that fell like golden rain. It was there that I scattered her ashes one September afternoon, when I couldn't carry the weight of longing alone anymore. The howl echoed again. This time, I was absolutely certain. It wasn't an animal. It was a person in distress. I followed the trail I knew by heart, even in the darkness. Every curve, every tree, every stone of the path was etched in my memory like a scar. The scent of damp earth and dry leaves rose from the horses' hooves. Crickets chirped among the trees in a symphony that only those who live in the country know. Every now and then, a mockingbird squawked in the highest branch of some cottonwood, complaining about our presence at this hour. The woods grew thicker as we approached the valley. Low branches scratched my face, damp leaves stuck to my shirt. The air was heavy, laden with moisture and the green smell of plants that only grow far from sunlight. It was a place that always gave me the creeps. Even before Mary died, there was something primitive there, wild, that reminded me of the times when man didn't yet dominate nature. It was when I saw the moonlight cutting through the trees in a clearing that I realized someone was there. A small figure leaning against the trunk of an old-growth hickory. Their arms seemed tied behind their back, their head lowered as if they'd fainted. And around the clearing, golden dots shone in the darkness. Eyes, many eyes, a whole pack watching us. My heart pounded like an old truck engine. Cold sweat ran down my back despite the morning chill. I dismounted slowly, the shotgun firm in my trembling hands. The golden eyes moved, following my every step. I could hear the heavy breathing of the animals, the rustling of dry leaves under their paws. I aimed upwards and fired. The blast echoed through the forest like thunder, scaring even the crickets. The golden dots disappeared among the trees in a desperate rush. I heard branches breaking, leaves flying, the sound of animals running away. "Hey!" I shouted, running toward the tied-up figure. "Are you okay? Can you hear me?" It was a young woman. Young, maybe 20 years old, not much older than that. She had dark, long hair plastered to her face with sweat and tears. Her hands were tied behind her back with a thick yellowish rope, the kind used to tie up cattle. Her feet were also bound, and she was trembling like a leaf in a storm. When she saw me coming, she raised her head. Her eyes were brown, large, full of a fear I recognized instantly. It was the same fear I saw in Mary's eyes when the doctor said there was nothing more to be done. The fear of someone who knows they might die and can't do anything to prevent it. "Easy now," I said softly, putting the gun away and kneeling in front of her. "I'm going to get you out of here. Nothing's going to happen to you." She tried to speak, but only strangled sounds came out. Her throat was dry, her voice gone from so much screaming. I took out the pocket knife I always carried and carefully started cutting the ropes. They were too tight, cutting off circulation. Her wrists were purple, swollen. "Can you walk?" I asked after freeing her hands and feet. She tried to get up, but her legs failed. She spent a few seconds massaging her ankles, trying to get the blood flowing again. When she tried again, she managed to stand, but wobbling like a drunk. "Slowly," I said, holding her arm. "There's no rush now." That's when she spoke, her voice a hoarse whisper. "The wolves. Will they come back?" "No," I replied, helping her walk toward the horse. "They won't be back, and even if they do, we're leaving now." Without thinking twice, I picked her up in my arms. She was as light as a bird, weighing less than a sack of feed. I felt her whole body relax when I lifted her, as if she could finally stop fighting the fear. I mounted Thunder with her in my arms, and we rode away at a gallop. I didn't look back. I didn't ask anything. I just felt the weight of that small body against my chest and thought of something I hadn't thought of in a long time. Maybe the solitude had come to an end. The scent of wet earth rose with the wind. It was going to rain before dawn. On the horizon, dark clouds gathered like soldiers before battle, and for the first time in 15 years, the promise of rain didn't make me sad. On the contrary, it had been a long time since I had someone to protect from the storm. The house was dark when we arrived, with only the moonlight shining through the curtainless windows of the living room. I turned on the porch light and saw my reflection in the fogged glass, a grey-haired man carrying a stranger in his arms, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. But it wasn't natural. None of this was. In 15 years of widowhood, I'd never brought anyone home. Not even Mrs. Davison, the closest neighbor, had set foot in here since Mary's funeral. The young woman was quiet in my arms, but I could feel her trembling. It wasn't just cold. July in Illinois can be cruel at night. It was fear. Fear of what had happened, fear of what might happen, fear of being in the house of a stranger in the middle of nowhere. I carried her to the guest room that Mary always said would be useful one day. "You'll see, Antonio," she used to say, adjusting the blue calico curtains with little white flowers. "Sooner or later, someone will need a roof over their head. Maybe a lost traveler, a distant relative. I don't know. A house should always be ready to welcome whoever needs it." 15 years later, my wife was right. The room smelled of mothballs and stagnant time. A double bed with a crocheted bedspread that Mary's mother had made as a wedding gift. A dark wood dresser with a slightly fogged mirror. A straw chair that creaked when someone sat down. And a crucifix on the wall, hand-carved from wood, that Mary bought at an arts and crafts fair in Galena. I laid the young woman on the bed carefully, as if she were made of glass. She hadn't said a word during the entire ride back, only clung to my shirt as if I were about to disappear at any moment. Now, under the yellow light of the flowered lamp, I could see her face better. She was pretty, with that simple country beauty. Sun-tanned skin, thick eyebrows, full lips. But she carried a heavy sadness in her brown eyes, a mark that only those who have suffered a lot can recognize. There was a small cut on her forehead, already half-healed, and scratches on her arms and legs, as if she'd run through the woods or as if someone had been violent with her. "Are you thirsty? Hungry?" I asked softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. She nodded slowly, but remained silent. Her eyes followed my every movement, alert, like a cornered animal. I realized she was assessing whether I posed a threat, whether she could trust me. I went to the kitchen and heated milk on the wood stove. While I waited for it to boil, I looked out the window that overlooked the yard. The first drops of rain were already starting to hit the roof tiles, making that noise that always calmed me. The mango tree that Mary planted was laden with green fruit. The chickens were sleeping perched in the henhouse that I built with my own hands right after we got married. Everything there had a story, every brick, every tree, every stone on the ground. It was a whole life built brick by brick, dream by dream. And suddenly, a stranger had entered that universe that I had kept closed like a coffin for so long. I returned with a mug of warm milk and a plate of sugar cookies that the neighbor, Mrs. Davison, had brought over the week before. "It's not good for a man to just eat rice and beans," she always said, appearing at my door with home-cooked meals. She was a good woman, Mrs. Davison. A widow like me, but one who never lost faith in life. The young woman was sitting on the edge of the bed now, her hands trembling in her lap. When she saw me coming back, she shrank a little, as if she wanted to disappear into the wall. "Drink slowly," I said, offering her the mug. "It's warm. It'll do you good." She held the mug with both hands, still trembling, and took small sips. She seemed not to have had anything to drink in days. The milk left a white mustache on her upper lip, which made her look even younger, almost like a child. "What's your name?" I asked, sitting on the straw chair that creaked as it always did. She finished drinking the milk before answering, as if she needed courage to speak. "Clara," she replied, finally looking me in the eyes. "Clara Santos." Her voice was hoarse, a little broken, but it sounded like music after so much silence. It had been 15 years since a female voice had spoken its own name inside this house. "I'm Antonio Ferreira da Silva. This is my house, my land. You're safe here, Clara." She nodded and lowered her head again. I realized she was fighting back tears, her shoulders trembling with the effort to control herself. "Clara, how did you end up in the woods? Who tied you to that tree?" She took a long time to answer. She bit her lower lip, wrung her hands in her lap, looked at the walls as if searching for an escape. When she finally spoke, her voice came out in a whisper. "I don't remember exactly. I was walking. I think I got lost. When I saw it, it was already getting dark, and there were those ropes. The explanation didn't make much sense. No one gets lost walking and wakes up tied to a tree in the middle of the woods. But I didn't insist. There was something in the way she looked away that told me the truth was more complicated and painful than it seemed. "Are you from around here?" "I'm from Rockford," she said, nibbling on the sugar cookie. "I came to visit an aunt in Decatur, but I don't know how I ended up in those woods. Rockford was almost 70 miles away. How had a young woman managed to get so lost? And why would anyone tie someone to a tree like that in the middle of the night, knowing there were coyotes in the area?" The rain thickened outside. The wind slammed the porch door shut, making a dry noise that echoed through the house. Clara shrank on the bed, her eyes wide with fright. "It's just the wind," I said, getting up to close the window that had been left open. "This house is old. It makes a lot of noise when it rains." "How old are you?" she asked suddenly. 53. "And you?" 21. 32 years of difference. Too big a difference between two people, too big for anything other than protection and care. But there was something in her eyes, a forced maturity, that made her seem older. As if life had skipped steps, skipped her youth, and thrown her straight into the phase of disillusionment. "You can stay here until the rain passes," I said. "We'll talk better in the morning, figure out how to get you back home." "What if they come back?" she asked suddenly, her eyes wide with fear. "Who?" She bit her lip, as if she had said too much. "The wolves," she said softly. "What if they come back? The wolves won't be back, Clara. And even if they do, they'll have to get through me first." I looked at her for a long moment. There was much more to this story than she was telling. But forcing the conversation wasn't going to help anyone. Painful truths have their own time to surface. I got up from the chair and turned off the light. "If anything happens, you shout," I said in the darkness. "My room is right next door. I'll leave the door open." "Antonio." "Yes?" "Thank you for saving me, for bringing me here, for not asking too many questions." "No need to thank me. We'll talk tomorrow." I left the room and closed the door slowly. On the porch, I sat on the swing that Mary liked to use on Sunday afternoons when she would read the novels she bought at the Springfield's farmer market. I lit a hand-rolled cigarette, a habit she always fussed about but never managed to make me quit. The rain was falling heavily now, drumming on the roof and forming puddles on the concrete floor of the porch. The scent of wet earth rose like perfume, mixed with the aroma of the azaleas that Mary planted around the edges of the garden. 15 years of living alone had taught me to hear all kinds of silence. The silence of the morning, when the world hasn't woken up yet. The silence of the afternoon, when the heat is so intense that not even the birds sing. The silence of the night, when only the crickets and the wind in the trees remain. And Clara Santos's silence was full of secrets. Painful, dangerous secrets, which she carried like stones in her chest. But for some reason that I didn't even understand, it didn't bother me. On the contrary, for the first time in a long time, there was someone breathing on the other side of the wall. Someone who might need me as much as I needed a reason to keep living. I finished the cigarette and threw the butt into the garden. Tomorrow would be another day. And for the first time in 15 years, I was curious to know what it would bring. And that was enough for now. I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of someone stirring pots in the kitchen. For a moment, still half asleep in the territory between dream and reality, I thought Mary had come back from the dead to make breakfast, as she always did. She always got up before me, even on Sundays, saying she couldn't stay in bed after the rooster crowed. "Sleeping after 5 in the morning is a waste of the day," she used to say, already dressed and combed while I was still rubbing my eyes. But when I really opened my eyes and saw the sun already high coming through the bedroom window, I remembered the night before, the howl in the woods, the run in the dark, the young woman tied to the tree. Clara. I got up quickly, putting on the leather slippers I wore inside the house, and went to the kitchen. There she was, stirring a pan of grits on the wood stove, her hair tied in a ponytail with an elastic band that she must have found in some drawer. She was wearing one of Mary's old shirts, a faded blue shirt with mother-of-pearl buttons that I never had the courage to donate or throw away. The shirt was big on her, but somehow seemed to have been made for her body. Her bare feet on the cold floor, she moved around the kitchen with a strange familiarity, as if she had always lived there. She knew where every utensil was, every spice, every pan, as if the house had spoken to her during the night, telling all its secrets. "Good morning," she said, looking at me over her shoulder with a shy smile. "I hope you don't mind. I woke up early and thought I'd return the favor." "You didn't have to," I said, still stunned to see my kitchen alive again. "You're a guest here." "A guest doesn't stand still," she replied, stirring the grits with a wooden spoon that Mary used to make polenta. "My grandma always said that idle hands are the devil's workshop." The way she spoke, the expressions she used, reminded me of my own grandmother, who raised my mother alone after my grandfather died building the interstate. Strong women who knew that work is medicine for any pain. I sat at the kitchen table, a solid wood table that I made myself in the first year of marriage, and watched Clara finish preparing breakfast. She moved with an almost desperate efficiency, as if she needed to prove her worth, justify her presence there. "Did you sleep well?" I asked. "Better than I expected," she said, pouring coffee into a blue enamel mug that Mary liked to use on Sundays. "It's been a long time since I've slept in a real bed." The phrase hung in the air like cigarette smoke. It's been a long time. What did that mean? Where had she been sleeping before appearing tied to that tree? The grits were perfect. Creamy, seasoned with just the right amount of salt, with that taste of home that I had forgotten existed. Clara had found smoked sausage in the pantry and fried it with onions, filling the kitchen with an aroma that reminded me of Sunday mornings with Mary, when we still had plans for the future. We ate in silence for a few minutes, only the sound of spoons on the plate and the mockingbirds outside, vying for territory in the trees in the yard. Clara ate slowly, savoring each bite as if it were the last meal of her life, or as if she didn't know when the next one would be. "You cook well," I commented, trying to break the silence that was becoming heavy. "My mother taught me," she replied, without lifting her eyes from the plate. "She said that a woman who doesn't know how to cook doesn't know how to take care of anyone, and a woman who doesn't know how to take care of anyone is good for nothing." There was a bitterness in that phrase that bothered me, as if she had heard it many times, not as loving advice from a mother, but as constant criticism. "Is your mother still alive?" "She died 3 years ago, stomach cancer." "I'm so sorry." "No need. She had a hard life. Maybe it's better this way." Another phrase loaded with meaning. What kind of life did a mother have to have for her daughter to think that death was better than living? "And your father?" "I never knew him. My mother said he ran away when he found out she was pregnant." We kept eating in silence again, but now it was a different silence. It wasn't discomfort, it was processing, each one digesting the information that the other was sharing little by little, like someone testing the temperature of the water before diving in. "Clara," I began, preparing to ask the question that had been haunting me since the night before. "I ran away," she interrupted me, as if she knew exactly what I was going to ask. "I ran away from home and ended up getting lost in the woods." The words came out like a confession in a church, loaded with guilt and relief at the same time. She stopped stirring the grits and stared at the plate for a long time. "Ran away from what?" I asked softly. "From my husband." I felt like someone had thrown a bucket of cold water on my chest. Husband, of course. A pretty girl like Clara wouldn't be alone in the world. Someone was looking for her, worried, maybe desperate. Did he hurt you?" She shook her head, but in a way that didn't convince even herself. She stretched the sleeve of her shirt over her wrist in an automatic gesture of someone who is used to hiding marks. "Not exactly. Rodrigo never raised his hand to me, but he..." He traps me. He watches me. I can't leave the house. I can't talk to anyone. I can't even go into the yard without him asking why, with whom, what time I'm coming back. Her voice was getting lower as she spoke, as if the words were too heavy to come out. And last night, she stopped talking and showed her wrist. She pulled the sleeve of her shirt up, and I saw a dark purple mark, the shape of fingers squeezing hard. Last night, he said that if I tried to leave the house again, he was going to tie me to the tree in the yard so I could learn to be quiet. He said that disobedient women had to be tamed like wild animals. I felt an anger rise in my chest, like lava from a volcano. What kind of man talks like that to a woman? What kind of man threatens to tie his own wife to a tree? So I waited for him to fall asleep and I ran away. Clara continued, tears starting to run down her face. I only grabbed the clothes on my back and left, but I got lost in the dark and someone really tied you to that tree, I completed. She nodded, sobbing now. I don't know who it was. I was walking down the road trying to get to my aunt's house in Decatur when someone grabbed me from behind, put something in my mouth, a cloth with a bad smell. When I woke up, I was already there. I thought I was going to die. I thought the wolves... She couldn't finish the sentence. She burst into sobs, her whole body trembling. I got up from the table and went to the window. Outside, the cows grazed peacefully in the field, wet from the morning rain. The sky was clear, blue like Mary's eyes. Everything seemed normal, peaceful, as it always was. But inside, I felt a dull anger growing in my chest. Someone had kidnapped Clara. Someone who knew she was running away, who knew where she would pass. Someone who wanted her to die, devoured by wolves, as if she were a disposable animal. This Rodrigo, he must be looking for you, I said, still looking out the window. He must, she whispered. Rodrigo doesn't like to lose his things. His things. The way she spoke gave me chills, as if she weren't a person but a property object. Do you want to go back to him? No. The answer came too quickly, too desperately. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell. It's just, I can't go back. I can't. I turned to her. Clara had her fists clenched on the table, her whole body tense, her eyes full of a panic that went beyond normal fear. Then don't go back, I said simply. But he'll find me. Rodrigo always finds me. He has friends in the police. He knows everyone in the area. He said that if I ran away, he would find me, even if he had to burn the whole world down. Not here, I said, returning to the table. Not in my house. She looked at me as if she didn't understand. You'd let me stay? For as long as you need. But you don't even know me. What if I bring trouble? What if he comes here? What if... Clara, I interrupted, placing my hand over hers. 15 years ago, I lost the only person who gave meaning to my life. Since then, this house has become a tomb, a place where I only existed waiting for death to arrive. Last night, when I brought you here, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. What? Purpose. She was quiet, processing my words. Outside, a robin began to sing in the mango tree that Mary planted soon after we got married. The sound brought me back memories that I had locked away in my heart. Mary humming while cooking, Mary watering the plants in the late afternoon, Mary dreaming of the children we never managed to have. My wife always said that God puts people in our path when we need them most, I continued. Maybe that's it. Maybe you appeared here not by chance. Clara wiped her tears with the sleeve of her shirt. What if he comes after me? Rodrigo is not a man to give up easily. If he comes, he'll have to get through me first. I repeated the words of the night before, but this time with more conviction. And I'm not a man to back down. She smiled for the first time since I met her. A small, shy, but real smile, like sun appearing between storm clouds. Thank you, Antonio. Really. I don't know how I'll repay you. You don't need to repay anything. Just stay, for as long as you want. This house has room to spare and heart too. We finished breakfast in a different silence. It was no longer the silence of fear or doubt. It was the silence of someone who was beginning to trust, of someone who was finding shelter in the middle of the storm. But deep down, a worry gnawed at my chest like termites in old wood. If this Rodrigo really showed up, would I be prepared to protect Clara? After 15 years of living like a ghost, did I still have the strength to face the real world? And more importantly, what kind of man was capable of ordering his own wife to be tied to a tree to be devoured by wolves? The day was just beginning, and I already sensed that nothing would be the same, for better or worse. Because sometimes, when we open the door to help someone, we don't know what kind of storm we're inviting in. The first few days passed like a delicate dance between two strangers learning to share the same space. Clara woke up before me, made coffee, and took care of the chickens as if she had always lived there. She had a way with animals. The chickens ate corn from the palm of her hand. The cat that lived in the yard rubbed against her legs. Even thunder neighed differently when she approached the corral. I went to the field, checked the cattle, and repaired the fences that time and rain had knocked down. A farmer's work never ends. There's always a gate that doesn't close properly, a clogged watering hole, a cow with a sore foot. But now the work had another meaning. It was no longer just an occupation to deceive time until death arrived. It was care, zeal for something that had value again. In the afternoon, Clara prepared lunch, and I told her about the farm, about Mary, about the years of solitude that now seemed to have been just a bad dream. She listened to everything attentively, asking questions, laughing at the funny stories, becoming serious when I talked about Mary's illness. "What was she like?" she asked one of those afternoons, while peeling potatoes for dinner. "Stubborn," I replied, smiling at the memory. "Stubborn as a mule. When she put something in her head, there was no force in the world that would make her change her mind. And did you like that?" "I loved it. I've always been kind of complacent, you know. I accepted things as they came. Mary taught me to fight for what I wanted, not to let life take me away." Clara smiled, but it was a melancholy smile. "It must be good to have someone who believes in us." "It is," I agreed, "and now I believe in you." She stopped peeling the potato and looked at me. "Why? You don't even know me, right?" "I know enough. I know you're brave because you ran away from a bad situation even knowing it was going to be dangerous. I know you're hard-working because you don't stand still for a minute. And I know you have a good heart because you treat my animals better than a lot of people treat people." Her eyes filled with tears. "It's been a long time since someone has talked to me like that." "Then it's time for you to start hearing it again." It was on a Thursday, a week after finding her, that the peace was shattered. I was in the corral separating the cows for vaccination, had to vaccinate against hoof and mouth disease, that annoying thing the government forces every year, when I heard the sound of an engine coming down the dirt road. It wasn't common to receive visitors, especially in the middle of the week. Mrs. Davison always came on Saturday mornings, bringing sweets and gossip from town. The vet came when I called, but I hadn't called, and the mailman came on Mondays, leaving the electric bill and store flyers. I left the work and walked to the porch, wiping my dirty hands on my jeans. The sound of the engine got louder, closer, until I saw the cloud of red dust kicked up by the tires. A new model black car, a Civic or Corolla, one of those city cars that weren't made for dirt roads. It stopped in front of the wooden gate that I made myself more than 20 years ago. A tall, broad-shouldered man got out of it, wearing a white dress shirt and dark jeans. He had black hair slicked back with gel, Ray-Ban sunglasses, dress shoes that were going to get dusty in 2 steps. Everything about him screamed city, money, and trouble. Clara was in the kitchen washing dishes when she saw the car through the window. I heard the sound of something breaking, a plate, a cup, and then her voice, low and frightened. "My God, it's him." There was no need to ask who it was. There was only one person who could make Clara react like that, Rodrigo. The man climbed the steps of the porch with the confidence of someone who was used to getting what he wanted. Studied, calculated movement, like a politician on the campaign trail. When he saw me standing at the door, he forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good afternoon," he said, extending his right hand while taking off his glasses with his left. "You must be Antonio Ferreira. I'm Rodrigo Santos, Clara's husband. I've come to get my wife." I didn't shake his hand. I stood still, my arms crossed, sizing up the man in front of me. He was younger than me, 30-something, maybe stronger, with muscles from someone who frequented the gym. But there was something in his eyes that I recognized, the look of someone who had never lost anything in life, of someone who thought the world owed him everything. "Your wife?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "I haven't seen any wife here." His smile became more forced, more false. "Come on, Mr. Antonio. I know my Clara is here. A neighbor saw her enter your property a week ago. She, how can I put it, is not well in the head. Sometimes she runs away from home, makes up stories, gets confused. I need to take her back for medical treatment." "What kind of treatment?" "Feminine problems, you understand. Hysteria, the doctors call it. Sometimes she doesn't know what she's saying, imagines things that don't exist. It's a disease that affects overly sensitive women." I felt the anger rise like lava in my chest. Hysteria. As if fear and despair were diseases of crazy women. As if running away from an abusive husband was something only a lunatic would do. "And you think I'm going to hand over a frightened girl to a man who shows up here talking about treatment?" Rodrigo's mask of politeness began to slip. The smile disappeared. His voice became harder. "Listen here, old man. Clara is my wife, my legal property. We were married in church before God and the law. I have a right over her. If you don't hand her over, I'll have to call the police." "Call them." What do you mean?" "Call the police," I repeated, taking a step forward. "You'll explain to them how your wife appeared tied to a tree in the middle of the woods. You'll explain the purple marks on her wrist. You're going to explain a lot of things." Rodrigo took off his glasses completely and stared at me. His eyes were small, dark, cold as a snake's. There was a small scar on his left eyebrow, a mark from a fight or accident. "You don't know who you're messing with," he said, his voice low and threatening. "I have influential friends in this area. I know the sheriff, the judge, the mayor. I can make your life very difficult. You may have problems with the IRS, with the USDA, with the health inspection. You know how it is. Small farm always has some irregularity." "My life has been difficult for 15 years, I replied, looking him straight in the eye. "One more, one less, doesn't make a difference." That's when Clara appeared behind me. She was pale as paper, trembling but firm. I could feel her breathing heavily, her heart beating fast. "I'm not going with you, Rodrigo," she said, her voice coming out stronger than I expected. Rodrigo changed completely when he saw her. His face softened, his voice became sweet, sticky like spoiled honey. "Clarita, my love, what is this story? You know you love me, that you need me. This difficult phase has passed. We go back home and forget all this, okay? I forgive you for all this nonsense." "No," she replied, hiding behind my shoulder. "I'm not going back. Never again." The change was instantaneous. Rodrigo's face contorted with anger, and for a moment I saw the man Clara knew behind the facade of politeness. "You are my wife," he shouted, taking a step towards the door. "We were married in church before God. I promised to love and protect you, and you promised to obey me. You can't abandon me because of a useless old man." I blocked his passage with my body. "I think you better leave," I said, my voice calm but firm, "while you can still walk away." Rodrigo looked at me for a long moment. Then he smiled, but it was a cruel smile of someone who was plotting something. "This isn't over," he said, putting his glasses back on. "Clara will come back with me, even if I have to burn this whole pigsty down. And you, old man, will learn not to meddle where you're not called." He walked down the steps slowly, each step calculated to intimidate. He got in the car and started it, but didn't leave immediately. He stood there, staring at us through the windshield, like a predator studying its prey. Before leaving, he lowered the window. 3 days! He shouted, his voice cutting through the air like a machete. In 3 days, I'll be back. And when I come back, I won't be alone. The car kicked up a cloud of red dust and disappeared down the road. But the sound of the engine still echoed among the trees when Clara collapsed into a chair on the porch, her body shaking with sobs. "He's coming back," she cried. "He's going to bring people. He's going to take me anyway. Rodrigo never takes no for an answer." I knelt in front of her and held her hands, which were cold despite the afternoon heat. "Not while I'm alive," I promised. "Not while there's breath in my chest." "You don't understand," she sobbed. "Rodrigo has money. He has influence. He knows everyone who's in charge in this area. He can make up anything. He can say you kidnapped me, that I'm crazy, and everyone will believe him. Then we're going to have to be smarter than him." She looked at me through her tears. How? I didn't know how. But I knew that 3 days was not enough time. Not nearly enough time to prepare for a war I didn't know if I could win. The sun set red that afternoon, tinging the sky as if it were blood. The cicadas sang in the trees, announcing a hot night. And for the first time in years, I was afraid. Not of dying. That never scared me much, especially after Mary passed. I was afraid of not being able to protect the only good thing that had entered my life since then. I was afraid of failing Clara, as I had failed Mary when she needed me to fight cancer. I was afraid of being alone again. But above all, I was afraid of what a man like Rodrigo would be capable of doing to recover what he considered his property. Because I had seen that look before, the look of someone who thinks that some people are objects, things that are owned and controlled. And men like that don't give up easily. 3 days, 72 hours to figure out how to protect Clara from a man who had money, influence, and no scruples. The night fell on the farm like a heavy blanket, and I stayed on the porch until dawn, watching the road, planning, thinking, trying to imagine what lay ahead, because I knew that when Rodrigo came back, it would be for real, and this time, he wouldn't come alone. The 3 days passed like 3 whole lives. Clara barely slept, barely ate, always looking out the window as if Rodrigo was going to appear at any moment with a troop of thugs. I wasn't much better. I cleaned the 12-gauge shotgun, checked the ammunition, 15 shells of heavy buckshot that I had kept in a cookie tin since the days when I still hunted. I reinforced the door locks with new wood, checked all the locks, tested the window bolts. I talked to Mrs. Davison, the closest neighbor, who lived 2 miles away in a brick house with a yard full of fruit trees. "Antonio, my son," she said, worried, stirring the coffee in the porcelain cup that she only used for important visits. "Isn't it better for you to take this girl far away from here, to some relative's house? This Rodrigo doesn't smell good to me." "I don't have any relatives," Clara had said when I suggested the same thing. "Rodrigo took it upon himself to keep me away from everyone. He made trouble with my cousin, made up that my aunt talked bad about him behind his back, said that my godmother just wanted to meddle in our life. And even if I had someone, he'd find me. He always finds me." Mrs. Davison stirred the coffee for a while, thoughtfully. "And the police, can't you file a complaint?" "Against whom?" I replied. "The man hasn't done anything illegal yet." And Clara said he knows the sheriff. "That's right. Is Rodrigo Santos the one who owns the dealership in town? If it's him, you have reason to be afraid. The man has money and influence. I've seen him at the hotel restaurant talking to the mayor, to the judge. Do you know him?" "By sight. I've bought a car there. Educated man, well-dressed, speaks nicely, but he has eyes. I don't know, eyes that don't inspire confidence. And his wife always seemed kind of scared. Too thin, too quiet." "How so?" "A couple of times I went there, I saw her in the office, sitting in a corner, quietly, just watching. And when her husband spoke to her, she just nodded. I never heard the woman's voice. I thought it was strange, but it wasn't my business." When I got home, I told Clara what Mrs. Davison had said. "It's like that," she confirmed, her eyes sad. "Rodrigo doesn't like me talking to other people. He says I'm too naive, that they'll take advantage of me. In the office, I had to sit in a chair in the corner, just watching, just listening. If someone asked something, he answered for me. And you put up with that for how long? 3 years since we got married. 3 years of forced silence. 3 years being treated like office furniture, like a decorative object without the right to her own voice. On the morning of the 3rd day, I woke up before the rooster crowed. The air was heavy, stifling, as it gets before summer storms. I looked out the window and saw dark clouds gathering on the horizon, coming from the side of Springfield. It was going to rain hard before noon. Clara was in the kitchen, stirring a coffee that neither she nor I were going to be able to drink. She had dark circles under her eyes, and her hands were shaking when she held the cup. "He didn't come," she said, more to herself than to me. 3 days have passed, and he hasn't come. Maybe he gave up, I lied, trying to calm us both. She shook her head, knowing her husband better than I would like to know. Rodrigo never gives up. He's planning something. He always plans everything in the smallest detail. That's how he does business. That's how he does everything in life. "How did you meet?" I asked, trying to understand how an intelligent girl like Clara had gotten involved with a man like Rodrigo. He appeared at the store where I worked in Rockford. I was a salesperson in a women's clothing store. Rodrigo came in, saying he wanted to buy a gift for his sister, but he was more interested in talking to me than looking at the clothes. She paused, stirring the coffee that was already cold. He was charming, you know. Well-dressed, well-spoken, drove a nice car, said he had a dealership in Decatur, that he was doing well in life, and I've always been a sucker for handsome men who talk well. It's not foolish to look for someone to love. It is when we confuse charm with character, she said bitterly. Rodrigo courted me for 6 months, always took me to the best places, always treated me like a princess. When he asked me to marry him, I thought I had won the lottery. When did he start to change? Soon after the wedding. First it was small things. Said I didn't need to work anymore, that he earned enough for both of us. Then he started complaining about my friends, said they were jealous of my luck and wanted to separate us. Then came the clothes. Some were too low cut, others too tight, others too colorful. Clara stopped talking and looked out the window, lost in memories. When I realized it, I was completely isolated, without work, without friends, without family nearby. I only had him. And he said that's how it had to be, that husband and wife had to be enough for each other. Why didn't you run away before? To where? I didn't have my own money, I had nowhere to go, and Rodrigo always said that if I left the house, no one would want me, that I was defective, that only he could stand me. That's when we heard the noise. Not a car this time, but several. Engines roaring, tires on the dirt, voices shouting. Clara dropped the cup on the floor, which shattered into 1,000 pieces. "My God," she whispered, running to the window. They came. There were 4 cars. Rodrigo in the first, the same black Civic from 3 days ago. In the other 3, men I didn't know. Big, truculent men, with the face of someone who was used to solving problems with force. They got out slowly, as if they had time and were sure they would get what they wanted. One of them was carrying a can of fuel, one of those 20-liter ones that is used to store gasoline. Another had an iron bar in his hand. The third was checking something on his cell phone, probably looking for a signal. My blood ran cold when I saw the can of fuel. "Clara," I said, grabbing the shotgun that was leaning against the kitchen wall. "I want you to go to the back room and lock yourself in there. Don't go out for anything, understand? For anything. And you? I'm going to talk to them. They're going to hurt you. You see that they brought gasoline. They're going to burn the house down, Antonio. With you inside." I looked into her eyes. Eyes that I had learned to love in these few days, even without having the courage to admit it to myself. "Maybe, but they won't take you. I promise that. I don't want you to die because of me. I'm not going to die. And even if I did, at least I'd die for a cause that's worth it." I went out to the porch with the shotgun in my hand. Rodrigo was in the middle of the yard, smiling as if he owned the place. He was wearing the same clothes as 3 days ago, but now he seemed more relaxed, more confident. The other 3 spread around the house. 1 went to each side, surrounding the possible exits. 3 days, as promised, Rodrigo shouted, his hands on his hips like an American movie cowboy. I brought some friends to help me convince my wife to come home. There's going to be no conversation, I replied, keeping the gun pointed down, but ready to use. You're not welcome here. Oh, but I think we are. You see, I found out some interesting things about you, Mr. Antonio, like the fact that your land deed has some problems. It seems there's a 10-foot discrepancy on the southern border of the property, and that you owe 3 years of property taxes. It would be a shame if the IRS found out, don't you think? He was well informed. There really was an issue with the deed, an unresolved inheritance from my father that I never had the money to fix. And the property taxes were really in arrears. How had he found out so quickly? And it would be an even greater shame, Rodrigo continued, signaling to the man with the gasoline, if this house caught fire by accident. Old wooden houses are very dangerous in dry weather. Any spark can cause a terrible fire. You wouldn't dare. Wouldn't I? He laughed, a humorless laugh. I already tied my own wife to a tree so she could learn to obey me. What do you think I wouldn't do to a stranger who is interfering in my marriage? I felt an anger so great that it almost blinded me. It was him. Rodrigo had tied Clara to that tree, hoping she would die of fear or be attacked by the coyotes. He had planned everything, her escape, the path she would take, the place where she would be captured. Son of a bitch, I growled, raising the shotgun. Easy, Grandpa, said one of the men, pointing a pistol at me. He was a big guy, bald, with tattoos on his arms and a jailbird face. We don't want to shed unnecessary blood. We just want the woman. Then you'll have to kill me first. That's when the storm arrived. The first lightning bolt streaked across the sky like a whip of light, followed by thunder that made the earth shake under our feet. In seconds, the wind became strong, bending the trees, kicking up leaves and dust. The rain began to fall in thick drops, then in a curtain. In a few minutes, it turned into a downpour. Clara! Rodrigo shouted over the noise of the rain and wind. Get out of there now! I'm not going to warn you twice! The man with the gasoline tried to take shelter under the porch, but the wind threw the rain sideways, soaking everything. The other slipped in the mud that quickly formed in the yard. The door of the house opened, and my heart stopped. Clara came out to the porch, getting wet in the rain, but firm. She had changed clothes. Now she was wearing a blue dress that belonged to Mary, her loose hair plastered to her face by the water. I told you to stay in the room, I shouted to her, trying to speak louder than the storm. And I said I wasn't going to hide forever, she replied. Then she turned to Rodrigo. You want to talk to me? Then talk. But Antonio has nothing to do with this. Rodrigo climbed the steps of the porch, soaked, his hair plastered to his forehead, but with his eyes shining with anger and triumph. 5 minutes, he said to the other men, who were fighting against the storm in the yard. If we don't leave in 5 minutes, burn everything, even with rain. Gasoline burns even underwater. He looked at Clara with a mixture of desire and hatred that disgusted me. You made me ashamed, Clara. You made me run after you like a dog. Now you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay dearly. I'm not going back, she said, her voice firm, despite the fear. I'd rather die. That can be arranged, Rodrigo smiled coldly. But first, your new boyfriend is going to watch your house turn to ashes. And then you'll understand that a married woman's place is next to her husband, not playing house with just anyone. That's when Clara did something that none of us expected. She ran down the steps of the porch, slipped in the mud of the soaked yard, but managed to get up and shouted to the men, I'll go with you, but leave him alone. Clara, no, I shouted, but she was already in the middle of the yard, surrendering to protect me. Rodrigo came down after her, triumphant, the smile returning to his face. I knew you were sensible, he said. holding her arm tightly, leaving a mark. "Let's go home and forget all this nonsense. You will be forgiven as long as you promise never to do such a stupid thing again." Clara turned to me one last time. In her eyes I saw not only farewell, but gratitude. Gratitude for someone having cared enough to fight for her, even if the fight had been lost. "Thank you," she murmured, the words getting lost in the noise of the rain that fell as if the sky had opened. They pushed her into the car. Rodrigo waved to me from the window, a wave of mockery, of victory, before starting the engine. I stood there on the porch, soaked, impotent, watching the 4 cars disappear down the muddy road. The rain mixed with the tears on my face, and for the first time since Mary's death, I cried. I cried for my cowardice, for my inability to protect those I loved, for the loneliness that came back like an avalanche, burying everything good I had found. But then, in the middle of the storm that still lashed the earth, I heard something that changed everything. A scream, a woman's scream coming from the direction of the road, cutting through the air like a knife through flesh. Clara. I grabbed the shotgun and ran to the corral. I mounted Thunder bareback and galloped through the rain, following the sound of the screams that were repeated, each more desperate. It didn't matter how many there were. It didn't matter if I was going to die. I wasn't going to leave Clara alone with those men, not again, because there were things worth dying for, and Clara had become one of them. I found the cars stopped a mile from the farm, at the curve of the old bridge over the Red Creek. One of them had skidded in the mud and crashed into a cottonwood tree. The windshield was shattered in the shape of a spider web, the passenger door open, swinging in the wind of the storm. Clara was outside, running down the muddy road like an apparition in the middle of the rain, with Rodrigo and one of the men behind her. Her wet hair plastered to her face, the blue dress torn at the knee, but running as if her life depended on it. And it did. I galloped straight to them, shouting like a madman, the shotgun in one hand and the reins in the other. Thunder stepped hard in the mud, splashing dirty water everywhere, the horseshoes sparking on the stones of the road. Rodrigo turned when he saw me arriving, his eyes wide with surprise. The rain had completely undone his gelled hairstyle, and now he looked less powerful, more human. The other man tried to pull a gun, but slipped in the mud and fell face first into the dirt. I got off the horse in motion, as I did when I was younger, and pointed the shotgun at Rodrigo. "Get away from her!" I shouted, my voice hoarse because of the rain that entered my mouth. "Get away from her now!" "You," he said, incredulous, spitting water and mud. "How?" I thought. "Get away from her now, or the next shot will be in your gut." Clara ran behind me, panting, her body trembling with cold and adrenaline. I felt her cling to my wet shirt, seeking protection. "They crashed the car," she said between sobs, her voice almost disappearing in the noise of the storm. Rodrigo got furious and started hitting me, said it was my fault, that I had brought bad luck. I managed to run away when the car overturned. I looked at the other 2 men. One was lying next to the wrecked car, groaning and holding his arm that looked broken. The other had disappeared into the woods, probably fleeing the confusion. Only Rodrigo was left, soaked and muddy, but still with that look of hatred in his eyes. "You can't do this," he said, his voice trembling with anger and frustration. "She is my legal wife. I have rights over her. The law is on my side." No law gives the right to tie a woman to a tree to die," I replied, keeping the gun pointed at him. "It was a scare for her to learn. I would never let anything really happen." "Liar!" shouted Clara, positioning herself at my side. "You wanted me to die. You wanted the coyotes to do the dirty work you didn't have the courage to do." Rodrigo looked at her with contempt. "You've always been too dramatic, always making things up in your woman's head." I don't make anything up," said Clara, her voice getting stronger. "I remember every humiliation, every threat, every night I slept afraid of contradicting you. I remember you saying that if I died, no one would miss me, that you would have another wedding in 6 months, Clara. And I remember you laughing when you tied me to that tree." laughing and saying that the coyotes were going to end the problem of the disobedient wife. The rain was decreasing, but it was still falling hard enough to soak us all. Rodrigo ran his hand over his face, trying to wipe away the water and mud, but he only managed to spread more dirt. "This isn't over," he said, trying to regain his composure. "I'll be back. I'll bring the police. "You're not going to do anything," I interrupted, "because if you show up here again, you're not going to leave alive. You don't have the guts to kill me." Maybe not," I admitted, taking a step forward, "but I have the guts to leave you crippled for the rest of your life." I fired a shot to the side of his head. The bullet passed so close that he felt the hot wind, and the blast echoed through the woods like thunder. Rodrigo peed his pants, his face turning white with terror. "Next shot is in your leg," I warned, reloading the shotgun. "The third in the other leg. The fourth, well, you get the idea." Rodrigo looked at me, then at Clara, then at the wrecked cars. He was calculating the chances, realizing he had none. The man who was injured managed to get up and limp to the car that still worked, groaning in pain. "She's not worth all this," Rodrigo said, trying one last card. "She's just a woman. You can find another one." But I invested 3 years in her, 3 years shaping, educating, transforming a random salesgirl into a decent wife. "Maybe," I replied. "But this one I choose to protect." "Clara," he shouted, a last desperate attempt. "When you get tired of playing house with this old man, you know where to find me. I'll be waiting." She didn't answer. She just moved closer to me, as if she wanted to make it clear which side she was on. Rodrigo spat in the mud and walked towards the car that was still working. The injured man was already in the passenger seat, holding his arm and grimacing in pain. Before getting in the car, Rodrigo turned one last time. "You're going to regret this, Clara," he said, his voice full of venom. "You'll see that a woman's place isn't next to just anyone who appears in your life." "My place," she replied, her voice firm and clear, "is wherever I choose it to be, and I choose to stay here." The cars disappeared into the rain, taking Rodrigo away from our lives. We stood there on the muddy road, soaked, trembling with cold and tension, not knowing what to do now. "Is it over?" asked Clara, her voice small as if she couldn't believe she was free. "It's over," I confirmed, lowering the shotgun. She collapsed on my chest, sobbing. I hugged her tightly, feeling the warmth of her body against mine, even in the middle of the storm that was beginning to subside. For a moment, nothing else existed in the world besides us. "You came to get me," she whispered. "Even knowing that you could die." "Of course I came. Why?" I looked into her eyes, wet with rain and tears, and said the truth that had been kept in my chest for days. "Because I love you." The words came out just like that, without beating around the bush, without fear. Clara smiled in the middle of the tears. "I love you too," she said. "Since that first night, when you brought me home. Since you looked at me as if I were a person, not property." We kissed right there, under the rain that was still falling on the muddy road, like two crazy people. And it was the most beautiful kiss of my life, because it was the kiss of someone who had found the way back to hope. 6 months later, Clara is on the porch, sewing a new curtain for the living room. Her hair has grown, and now she wears a loose bun that lets a few strands escape across her face. She is humming a song that I haven't heard in years, "Home on the Range." Her voice is sweet in tune and fills the house with a joy that I had forgotten existed. Rodrigo never showed up again. We learned from Mrs. Davison that he moved to Kansas City, found another woman to torment, a girl from a wealthy family that the father offered in marriage to settle gambling debts. Clara made a point of finalizing the divorce, even though he didn't sign the papers. "I don't want anything pending from the past," she said. "I want to start over, from scratch." Now the farm has changed completely, not only because now there's a woman taking care of it, but because it has come back to have life, purpose, future. Clara planted flowers in the yard, sunflowers, roses, daisies that she brought from seedlings from town. painted the walls of the house light blue, Mary's favorite color, which was also hers. Brought 3 cats to scare away the rats and named each one Hope, Courage, and Rebirth. At night, we play music on the transistor radio that we bought at a county fair in Springfield and dance barefoot in the living room. Clara taught me some country dance steps that she learned when she was single, and I teach her the waltzes that I danced with Mary at the town dances. Sometimes, when the wind blows coming from Wolf Valley, I remember the night I found her, and I think about how strange fate is. For 15 years, I lived like a walking dead, just existing, counting the days until death arrived. It took the howls of coyotes on a cold morning to bring me back to life. Clara puts the sewing aside and comes to sit next to me on the swing that we renovated together. She rests her head on my shoulder and sighs contentedly. She has a simple band on her finger, a silver ring that we bought in Decatur on the day we formalized our union in a small civil ceremony, with only Mrs. Davison as a witness. "What are you thinking about?" she asks. "About us," I replied, "about how sometimes the most beautiful things in life are born from the most difficult moments. Like flowers that bloom after the storm," she completes. "Exactly." We are silent, swinging slowly, listening to the sound of the crickets and the mooing of the cows in the pasture. The sun is setting behind the eucalyptus trees, painting the sky orange and pink. Soon, Clara will make dinner, and I will tell about the calf that was born this morning. We will sleep embraced and wake up together tomorrow. It's a simple, small life, without great adventures, but it's ours, and it is enough. "Antonio," Clara breaks the silence. "Yes? Do you think Mary would approve? Our union, I mean?" I think about the question for a moment. Mary was always generous, always believed that love multiplies instead of dividing. "I think so," I reply. "Mary always said that the heart is not territory to be disputed, it's a home to be shared." I hope so. I didn't want her to think I was taking her place. "You didn't take anyone's place, Clara. You created your own place, and you did it taking care of me, the house, the animals, as if it had always been your family." She smiles and squeezes my hand. "That's because now it really is. My family, my home, my life." The night arrives slowly, as it always does in the country. First the shadows get longer, then the cicadas start to sing, then the first stars appear in the sky that darkens little by little. Tomorrow, I will take Clara to see the city where I was born, introduce her to the distant relatives that I still have. Then we will stop at the courthouse to see the last divorce papers. In the afternoon, we want to buy paints to paint the room that will be for the baby. Because Clara is 2 months pregnant, and this time, life is being generous with us. "Are you afraid?" she asks, as if she read my thoughts. "Of what?" "Of being a father at 54 years old." "I am," I admit, "but it's a good fear. Fear of someone who has something to lose, something to protect." "It's going to be a girl," says Clara, passing her hand over her belly that doesn't show yet. "I'm sure." "How do you know?" "Mother's intuition. And if it's a girl, I want to name her Mary, in honor of your first wife." I feel my eyes fill with tears. Not of sadness, but of a joy so great that it doesn't fit in my chest. "She would have liked it," I managed to say. "She will like it," Clara corrects. "Wherever she is, she'll be glad to know that you found happiness again." The first star appears in the sky, shining alone before the others arrive. Clara makes a wish in silence, closing her eyes and clasping her hands. When she opens her eyes, she looks at me and smiles. "What did you ask for?" "That our daughter grows up in a house full of love, and that she never needs to run away from home in the middle of the night to find happiness." "That's not going to happen, I promise. Our daughter will grow up knowing that she is loved, that she has value, that she deserves respect. She will grow up knowing that she can choose her own life. Like I chose mine," says Clara, snuggling in my arm. "Like you chose yours." We stayed there until the stars filled the sky and the crickets sang in chorus. Then we went home, hand in hand, to have dinner and plan the future that we finally had reason to dream about. Because I learned that happiness is not in great achievements or heroic deeds. It is in small gestures, in unexpected encounters, in the courage to open the heart to those who need shelter. It is in extending a hand when someone is lost in the darkness. It is in believing that it is always possible to start over. And it is mainly in discovering that it is never too late to love again. In the heart of the United States, where the red dirt meets the infinite sky, two lost souls met on a stormy night. And they discovered that sometimes all it takes is a gesture of humanity to change the destiny of two lives forever. Because true love is not the one that comes in easy times. It is the one that is born when everything seems lost and teaches us that it is worth fighting for those we choose to protect. It is the one that transforms two strangers into family. It is the one that makes us believe in new beginnings. It is the one that teaches us that courage is not in not being afraid, but in doing what is right, even when you are afraid. And it is the one that shows us that sometimes, in the middle of the darkest forest, we find exactly the light we were looking for without knowing it.